Turn my mic on. All right, everybody. Um, how we doing tonight? Hey, Nisa Simpson. Thank you for the 6 months tier 1 subs. Time has definitely flown by. Good Morty, good to see you as well. So those of you who tuned in, you know, I don't like to waste any time. I like to get right to the fucking point. So I have a great guest joining me here today on the stream who I saw was active and not missing in action online. And I just said, when I used to watch their channel long before I started making my own YouTube, I'm like, I would love to just talk to this individual. And now I have that opportunity. So I am joined by the charming and wonderful Badmouse. Say hi, Badmouse. All right. I believe they can all hear you now. So for everybody listening, while I get you up on the screen here, just tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name's Dave. Not David. Only my mother calls me David. But I used to go under the name. I still do go under the name Badmouse. I started doing videos like back in 2013, 14. Normally sort of quite centrist, and eventually went quite anarcho-capitalist eventually, and then slowly I saw truth and came round to the left about 6 years ago, and off and on since then, I suppose. But for the most part, I've been pretty dormant for the past few years. But yeah, that's me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on stream here. So, what would you I know watching some of your older content, you made a lot of great cases for anarcho-communism towards the end of the period when you were regularly producing content, and I have to ask, is that where you would broad stroke your political alignment these days?
Well, no, I've sort of moved around a lot. I don't know if you watched my more recent videos, but uh, to be honest, I just find the whole politics things. I don't know exactly how to explain my views currently, to be honest, because the problem is normally you'd sort of get into this quite organically, and you'd go into it, and you get involved through your work or your union or something like that, and that would get you into politics. It wasn't like that for me. It was sort of it was the internet, and I think in a general sense that's kind of not a great thing, because you've got so many different opinions coming left, right, and center, and it's not always it's always good in terms of forming your strong concurrent political beliefs. But in terms of, to get back to your question, in terms of your my beliefs currently, I don't really know, apart from just communism. We need it, really.
Hey, I can agree with you there. Actually, sometimes it can get a little bit gross with just how atomized we get. Well, those people over there are MLs, and those people over there are ANCOMs, and those people over there are Maoists, and I will willingly admit I am a bit behind on my theory. I'm not an anti-theory channel, but they know that at least when it comes to European authors of theory, that I tend to find the phone book more interesting. So, but I think a better set of questions to better suss it out would be, and a general question I'd just like to ask, looking at the state of things, both what you have in the UK and what we're trudging through here in the United States and so-called Canada. You see where we are now. What do you think the biggest goal should be for someone just broadly calling themselves left-leaning? Supporting workers, supporting democratic control over the means of productions. What should our priority be?
I mean, the problem with living in Britain is that you get a lot more, even though we're all the way across the Atlantic, we get a lot more words from the United States and everything. So the conversation often sort of becomes quite American centric.
Mm.
And I think like only really sort of like Novara Media now are sort of creating that kind of more British centric perspective for British people. Which, you know, I have my disagreements with Novara Media on a lot of things, but I think that that's kind of a good thing in that sense. I mean, um, in terms of our goals right now, I mean, I tend to find, you know, because I have dabbled in and out with a few parties here. God, at one point, I actually dabbled with the. I didn't know at the time, but I found out the Revolutionary Communist Group. You know who they are?
Revolutionary Communist Group, is that a British group? I don't know if I know them by
It's
name.
a British group. They've been going back a while, but they're not great.
Oh.
And that people can find out stuff about them. But yeah, I sort of, you know, tried figuring out, you know, what would be the best way to go. And unfortunately, what I've tended to find is a lot of the communist groups, the communist parties, a lot of the time in the West, just not what it used to be. It's not like there, you know, it was just one back in the day that, you know, you subscribe to. There's lots of them, and they're not doing much in terms of, you know, actual results that get them, you know, under the ire of the intelligence services and stuff like that. You know, it's largely just, I don't know.
It's okay to trash the DSA if you like. We do it all the
No,
time on
I
this
mean,
stream.
I don't know too much about the DSA. I think they're sort of social democrats, right?
Well, they call themselves Democratic Socialists. That's the
Right,
title of
yeah.
their organization.
Potato.
Well, here's what I
Which,
would say is that
yeah.
a lot of the organizations are afraid to be anything more than toothless, and
Mm,
part of that's our own fault as Americans. We've basically given our government the power to violently beat down anything that they don't like, and so
mm,
I think we're still walking on eggshells and afraid to be open. We're still afraid to be openly communist here. There are large swaths of this country where people will side eye you saying openly communist, the same as if you said you were in the Klan, and that's the
right.
God's honest
Mm,
truth. So and there is a big focus on electoralism here. I can only imagine over there in Brit Bongar land that things are equally equally your elections. Matter of fact, I've seen over the years, because I am, I guess I'd say, a little bit older than average for the YouTuber market here, and I think you're a little closer to my age, is that you all have started pulling more and more of our electoral theater every cycle that goes by. I
mm,
distinctly remember when you had your first American style televised debate on
mm.
British
Yeah,
television.
I remember watching it when I was a kid.
And I just thought, oh no,
Yeah,
that's not something you should
my
import.
my dad was definitely one of the people to go like, "Oh, it's just bloody they're taking everything from America. What's going on?"
Just don't start
Yeah.
shooting people, okay? If,
I mean, the one thing that we do have is that we're still always just, you know, the House of Commons just, you know, acts like a bunch of toddlers, you know, whereas in America they still try and pretend to be polite and everything, whereas here we're just complete bonkers in the House of Commons, just shouting and murring at each other. So
yeah,
at least we have that.
I actually wish it was like that between you all and the like the Parliament of the Nation of Taiwan. I think. I think a few fists being thrown on the floor of Congress, or some terse words and some colorful nicknames being thrown about, might actually get a bit more the seriousness of what we're doing
Yeah.
across. I don't I don't tend to dwell on it, but part of what brought you across my radar was a bit of a recent back and forth you had with some other online content creators, one in particular, and you made a 3 weeks ago you made a video talking about the haunting specter of baby leftism, because you've always had such wonderful prose with your videos. So I know there was a couple responses thrown back and forth. I think there were 2 responses on his end. I know you made one follow up, and we're content to leave it at that. And that's smart because it never ends.
Yeah,
It gets just nastier and nastier as it goes on. But what, that takes us to decolonization. So what do you think your thoughts are, your parting thoughts are on both how we interact with decolonization and how we need to be interacting with decolonization?
I think the oh God, can't really can't really, I really swell up a bit when I'm on live, to be honest. Um,
It's
do you
okay.
have something maybe a bit more
Oh, no, no, no. I'll
yeah,
we'll take it back, and we will try something a bit simpler. So,
I'm a bit
um
nervous.
no, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to be nervous.
Right.
So, let's make it a more simple question about you and your channel. You have an old videos playlist. Whoops, wasn't supposed to play. I noticed you do have a number of your old videos on that playlist, and some of the ones were ones that I was a big fan of. Things like the unheard voices of West Asia, North Africa. That was one that I really liked. Secret to Left Unity. I really, really liked actually your video Beyond Sex Work, because you were one of the few, almost no one online was talking about the fact that, like, yes, we can support the labor of sex workers, but this is something many people, due to financial conditions, are being forced into.
Mm,
So, what I do notice isn't on your playlist, and it's the only one that I'll ask about that
okay.
didn't make the cut. Trust me,
Which one's it going to be?
I won't grill you. I do believe you covered one about some chuds online spreading misinfo about South Africa, and that was one of your videos that really got me thinking about decolonization before I started doing this YouTube thing. I noticed your South Africa video is not present.
South
Do you
Africa.
do you
I
want
don't remember
to?
doing one. Huh? Are you sure you're talking to the right person, Car?
It may have been a clip in a video
I'm just trying to
responding.
think right now. Um,
You responding to, it might have been the Red Ice fucks, talking
oh, Red
about the
Ice Media.
Boers, talking about the
Yeah,
farmer killings and the Boers.
I mean, to be honest, that video and a few others, the reason that I don't really have those up anymore is because I just don't think they're very good.
Okay.
And you notice that with a lot of my videos, especially sort of after I came back from a hiatus, I just ended up making a lot of videos that I just felt weren't actually made because I wanted to make them. I just made them because I felt I had to make them. And I think, when you're making content, that's not really what you should be doing. You should be making content because, you really, enjoy it, and, you've got something good to say. But I just felt I was making a lot of sort of generic points. It wasn't really the best written of anything. But
Would you say that your public private conversation lands in that list of videos you just felt was either too many obvious points, or maybe it just wasn't high
I,
high quality?
yeah, I mean, like, there's other videos, like I've made videos on freedom of speech, and whilst I agree with some of it, I just felt the video actually was three videos put together, and at the end I go on like a spiel about myself, and I'm like, well, I don't really want to, you know, put me and my personal self in it that much and all that. And then other videos are just stuff that I was like, what was I thinking about making that? Other stuff is like, that's just embarrassing. It's badly shot. Other stuff, I'm like, well, I wasn't even making a point there. What the hell, And and after a while, I just sort of feel as though part of me, what just turns me off from making videos these days is just it just doesn't feel nice. I don't know about if you've ever felt that, but just
Now, what I'll say is I can totally understand where that comes from, but what I will say is I guess perhaps my channel is young enough to the point where I don't have that have that had happen.
right,
Haven't had that
yeah,
happen yet. I'm a year and a half into this. So, uh, you could say I'm just a
Yeah.
baby YouTuber right now, and I think the biggest thing for me that perhaps prevents some of that is just an absolute dog shit production schedule, like with no consistency at all. And so it literally, and part of this is due to executive dysfunction, but it's literally just I wait for a subject to come to mind that I'm passionate enough about to
Mm,
hammer out 3,000 words about it. My videos are short. I don't make lengthy essays also is the thing. So I
mm,
think the physical and emotional investment of making videos that were as lengthy as yours can definitely take a toll, because you shoot all this raw footage and then you're editing for 2-3 days at a time probably. I don't know what your workflow was like. For me, it's it's a lengthy process, even just for the 10-minute, 15-minute videos I make. So, but I
mm,
understand how someone could get burnt out on that.
mm.
So,
I mean, I think it's something that's probably been felt by pretty much all people who do stuff on the left. When I started, it was very, very simple to make a video 1 or 2 days, and then just as time goes on, your desire to make things just gets bigger and bigger, really. And so you just feel that. But I just sort of felt like I just sort of felt like there's maybe when I came back, sort of people had there are better people out there who can say it better than I can, and can say it without feeling like they're a big imposter all the time. That's something you'll probably definitely deal with as you get bigger. Like imposter syndrome is mad, and you look at videos where someone's like, where you've said one thing, and then you're like, well, wait, don't take it like that. Take it like this, and you're like, I said it wrong, and if only I'd done that, and that just grates on your mind after a while. And so a lot of the time, I just feel like it's sort of better to not say anything at all, really. But then I kind of failed on that a few weeks ago, making these new ones. But that's just because I was just pissed off
well, some
with
of these online
the Discord.
personalities,
Yeah.
they can be very infuriating. It can be hard to bite your tongue, and I've learned that lesson too. It's
Yeah.
what it's funny you mentioned feeling that imposter syndrome. I swear I've probably over the past year seen 15 different YouTubers say something to that effect, and I'm like,
Mm,
I think we need like a support system for that, to like like you're going to hit this bump in the road somewhere around tens of thousands of subs. Here's how you mentally prepare for that,
mm,
because it seems to hit everybody. So
yeah. I often do wonder sometimes, like, sort of some of the things that I was trying to get at in my last few videos was just like, you know, um, what this ultimately is building, with left tube and all that, whether you want to call it that, where it exists anymore, Um, I just feel as though all it's doing is just building up, egos and personalities. Not anyone in particular, but it's just it's on the one hand it's necessary. On the other hand, I just don't feel as though I feel we put too much importance and too much worth into this when the real stuff that should be the secondary stuff. Why does everybody want to be comms officer, but nobody wants to be membership officer or chair or something like that? Because comms comes with a sort of like personality and artistry, but it's only one part of the whole process, isn't it? And I feel
mhm.
when it becomes that main subject, then it just becomes prestige, doesn't it? It's no longer worth anything, is it?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm,
It's funny you mentioned that everybody wants to be comms, or everybody wants to be agitprop, including myself. Everybody
yeah.
wants to make the red posters, right?
Mm,
Um, and shout out to anybody watching. Look up wheat pasting. You should do it. That's all I'm gonna say. But moreover, I think for me, I say I want to be the security forces. Give me the Ushanka and the rifle. I want to do that part. But that hopefully comes much later down the road, and that's the part you
Mm.
hope doesn't have to happen. And
Even like in like that general, like you were saying about everyone wants to be the, what do you call it, fighting,
agitprop.
almost agitprop and all
Oh,
that.
security forces.
Yeah, everyone wants to be, doing the sort of on the streets kind of stuff. But even in a lot of the stuff I've seen, like on the streets, quote unquote, especially in sort of more recent times, I don't know if you've heard about this thing called Kill the Bill in Britain.
I have heard of that. Yes.
Yeah, so basically they just bring in they brought it in now, so Kill the Bill's kind of dead in the water, but it was a bill designed to basically increase the powers of the police and basically make protests kind of irrelevant unless they were basically organized by the police, which is stupid. But what was
Oh,
kind of
they're doing it here
infuriating,
too. They're doing it here.
yeah, yeah, probably doing it everywhere. Fascism is growing, but um, like what was kind of infuriating, going back to sort of those things about stagnant, like communist groups and whatever in Britain. I was at a parade, a march that they were doing about Kill the Bill, and all that it basically amounted to was us just walking for an hour to the cathedral, and then the group I mentioned earlier, Revolutionary Communist Group, sort of took power over the organizers or whatever and started like saying, right, yeah, whoever wants to speak, come up, and this is like a free speaking event, come up and say some noise and blah blah blah. And then I think a few people came up, and it just felt silly. It was just a load of us just standing outside a cathedral doing nothing. Why didn't we march down to the police station or something like that? I
Yeah.
remember one of the first pieces of direct action that we ever took part in my entire life was really quite quite interesting, is that we were doing a May Day march, and then right at the end of the May Day march, when everyone's supposed to sort of go there, a load of us diverged off impromptu, didn't know it was going to happen, and went to this bar, which was like gentrifying a really poor neighborhood in Bristol, and we just marched in and like tried to give out flyers and cause some disruption and all that. And obviously it's not doing much, but it is actually at least some kind of proper direct action that sort of causes a scene. And we ended up getting, when if your action results in you, as I was, getting literally thrown out of the door, then that's something I think you could say, is more in the direction of worthwhile. If you're literally just standing outside a cathedral for half an hour or an hour just talking and shouting and then going home, it's not really proper, is it?
No, I
It's
mean,
not.
if you're not
No.
blocking traffic, at least,
Yeah.
my thought is if you're going to be taken to the streets, then it needs to be disruption. I mean, even MLK was about civil disobedience and
Oh yeah.
disruption. He had Bayard Rustin helping him organize, who
Mm,
was a
mm,
a true
yes.
communist. And I'm of the belief, like, I want there to be, well, I want there to be more things, some of which I can't necessarily say on YouTube, but like a perfect example that I can reference is, earlier this year when they started lifting moratoriums on evictions that had started due to the pandemic,
Mm.
there was one group that they literally ran with water jugs and quickcrete cement to the eviction court and cemented the doors so this court staff couldn't go in. And I'm like, that's what you should be taking the streets for. And then they literally human barricaded themselves away from city workers trying to break it down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that right there is something that you can consider. Which, and if you want to shy away from vandalism, I know that you even on your channel have talked a couple times about things like squatter movements. California saw a big push in that, and I think some of these very gentrified neighborhoods could learn from that across the country and across the world. They're like, this house is empty, community shows up and makes a human wall around it and moves in an unhomed family. And they just said,
Mm.
fuck it, these people need a place to live. It's that simple. And so it's absolutely. I think if you're going to be pounding the pavement, that's I'm not necessarily interested in just going and having a chat in the park or in front of a church. But if I'm going to go make everybody at City Hall very uncomfortable or disrupt some of the mechanisms in our society that's kicking the working class down, I'm all here for it. I'm all for it. So what would you? I guess what would you like to see, or maybe more of, from people who are using what they have available, which in some cases might just be their voice and ability to speak to an audience about these things? Do you have any thoughts on what maybe you'd like to see more of on left tube? We're not saying bread tube anymore. Apparently that's a nasty word, and which sucks because that's why I became a YouTuber. I'm like, well, like, hey, no, I want to be a bread tuber too, and they're like, no, bread tube is bad. We're not bread tube anymore. I'm like, oh, okay.
It's at the end of the day, like left tube, bread tube, whatever, was just the friends we made along the way. It's just it was just a bunch of people who all made similar stuff, and then it got coined into the term. And initially I was like, yeah, but then when I heard people talking about like, oh, we should have like bread con and stuff like that, and I'm
Oh,
like,
Jesus Christ Almighty!
should we, or should we like be trying to get people's deposits back and stuff like that?
Let me tell you what would happen if you did BreadCon. All right, if you did BreadCon, it would be fucking Harris Bomber guy and Natalie Wynn hosting panels and fucking Vosh debating people in a goddamn side room, and it would be so stupid. I worked VidCon, and that was already a migraine-inducing fucking fever dream.
Jeez. Yeah, no. I've never been a fan of those cons anyway. They are cons. But in terms of what people should be doing, well, getting. I don't know if you watch Rev Left Radio and the Red Menace and stuff like that, but I always found those guys were they're very like good because they're just talking about just the general sort of theory side of things. And normally, because I'm not a very good reader, I'm very dyslexic, I found it was quite good the way that they didn't just give us the blurb, but gave us sort of a this is how we can analyze it, this is how we can approach it, this is how we can put it in the world. I found that very useful in terms of sort of like understanding all these texts that are 100 years old or whatever, and we feel as though they're not as relevant anymore, or they're hard to read and whatnot. And I found that was something that I feel I could put my support to a fair bit more. And I mean obviously if there's more people on the left, and that's good, but it's got to be useful, it's got to be disruptive, it's got to be doing something. It can't just be left stuff for left's sake. It's got to be actual. And I mean, maybe in the sense of like you doing it as your side project, and in the meantime actually taking part in real actions in the world, I think is going to be more effective. And if we can push people towards that way. But I wonder sometimes if even YouTube is the space that can allow that. I don't really know if there's any hope of that happening.
There are some who have begun a long and messy divorce with YouTube in that regard. I mean, it's owned by Google, and Alphabet's a pretty atrocious fucking company. So I know that I've had a slight concern that it would be more of the same, but I know right now, for instance, some friends of the channel are on something called Means TV, which is a subscription service that is all for left-leaning content creators specifically, and it's cooperatively owned, to my knowledge, and operated. And I think I actually agree with you that something people with the gift of communication could do, and I was a communication major in college. I'm talking to a Brit. At university, I was a communication major, and synthesizing the written theory, hopefully a little more non-European theory. I mean, getting some more Kamboa Irvin and some Franz Fanon
Mm,
would not hurt at all.
mm,
Is actually a useful tool for communicators, and I personally, with my videos, always try to incorporate a tangible call to action in them to have something for them to take away from it. And I
mm.
agree that maybe that could be a bit better, that we could do, those of us making content online. I guess I didn't have a question with that. It was more just me saying, hey, be better, BreadTube. Be better.
Yeah, and I think sort of the what I've seen, I don't know, because when I was here like 6 years ago, 2015, obviously the left was like tiny online, and it was pretty much at that time just loads of edgy, you know, anti-feminist men going around jerking each other off, uh,
Oof.
and and then and back then I definitely found, at least those of us who had some degree of following, even if it was just a few thousand subscribers, seemed to be a lot more sort of susceptible to any amount of interesting topics from the left, I suppose. And nowadays, I feel, now that sort of it's become more, I wouldn't say it's mainstream, but it's become a bit more out there. You can be openly this or openly that, at least online or whatever. There's definitely been a kind of degradation in terms of the average, if that makes any sense. Like, it seems to be very much like, I guess, as you say, like DSA-esque orientated. And that might be just because that's maybe in real life only place they can sort of go to. I don't know, but generally, I think there is a tendency to push towards that kind of electoral, safe, okay kind of thing, and it invites a very kind of, like I say, milk toast kind of attitude, that just sort of feels like you're doing it as you got your badge, rather than doing it because it's something. It is worthwhile. It's a world we want to see. It's not just, this is my identity as a leftist or whatever. Just swapping the right wing badge for the left wing badge, and I can't help but feel that'll be the downfall of it all.
Right. Yeah. It's a concern. And I think that, well, I think that what originally inspired us to go onto the platform to make these videos, I think that should be brought back. That it wasn't, for some, it was to counteract how right wingers had kind of taken a stranglehold over YouTube. Some have said they kind of beat us to online content in that regard. And
Mhm.
so it was, for some of them, it was a response to use their language and turn it back on them and counter and provide an easy counter to a lot of their points. And in the case of some of them, do it in a very dramatic fashion centered around media criticism. I was never even a big fan of calling a number of these really, really big people left tube. Like, I'm sure Harry Brewis is a perfectly nice guy. He seems very friendly. But he's a media critic that is left leaning, right? Like Abigail Thorne is a drama and philosophy educator that is left leaning. Natalie Wynn is a philosophy communicator who happens to be left-ish leaning, and even that is questionable now. But these became some of the biggest faces of it. When people talk about it, they don't tell their friends, oh, go listen to Red Menace. They say, oh, go
Mm.
watch this H Bomber guy video. And like, okay, that was fun and entertaining, but what was the action that you took away from that? And I say that as a longtime subscriber of H Bomber guy. It's just,
Yeah.
what was your takeaway from that? And what I'll posit this and then ask you what you think. Do you think maybe it was the start of an uphill battle to begin with, to putting energy into making videos because the inherent nature of what it takes. I know Dan Olson spoke on this once. Video hosting is exceptionally expensive. The infrastructure and framework to host a video hosting website takes a lot of, well, resources, and it takes a lot of electric and takes a lot of bandwidth. You have to have massive server farm behind your website to host all that nonsense. And so that's already going to start to put it in the domain of corporations to be the biggest players on the block in that field. Would you say that that imposes an inherent limit on what you can do while operating as anarchists or as broadly leftists or as communists?
I haven't really thought about it in that sort of sense. I mean, ultimately, you know, I guess there are massive limits to how far you can go on YouTube. I mean, I don't, in terms of stuff sort of like memes TV and stuff. I think the problem with that is it leans into the sort of like, well, yeah, that's great, but it is also sort of like a paid service, you know, and it's not really, you know, part of the commons. It's sort of the irony of YouTube, which is like, you know, memes TV you have to pay for, but YouTube is in a sense a bit more open fields and pastures and stuff, and that will obviously get to more people. I don't necessarily know. I haven't really used memes TV that much, but I don't necessarily know if it is going to be effective in the sense of educating people if it is a platform that has paywalls. Not that I think that necessarily it can last without it. Obviously, yeah, it is definitely meant towards the corporations.
No, I get it. It's I wish it well.
It's a good idea, but I just feel it's fundamentally limited.
I agree, and I wish it well because I have some good friends on there, some very well-meaning, and some like locally active friends who are actually putting in a lot of work on the ground to forward their means. And I always like people who do groundwork as an anarchist. If people ask me if you're curious, I usually just say black anarchist. There is a distinction, referencing Lorenzo Kambua Irvin again. And trust me, I've been dying to get him on stream, but he doesn't answer his Twitter DMs at all, or Facebook. And I'm like, come at me. I've read your book for 70 minutes in a video. Please, I would love to talk to you.
The book, if people don't know, is the progress. Is that the one you're referencing, the Progressive Plantation?
I have read that one, and that is a good one. But
many other ones, yeah. Like Black Anarchism is a book as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, Anarchism and the Black Revolution is one that really resonated with me, and it really resonated with me because it just it touched on a lot of what we have going on now, and it also, while affirming some of my beliefs about anarchism, it talked about some of the dangers and issues he ran into interacting with white anarchists and white communists. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe he spent some time in prison even. And to me, that book is nothing but call to action. From cover to cover, everything he's talking about is like, okay, so get out of the book clubs, get out of your library meetings. You have a community right there surrounding you, these black communities that need that direct action and mutual aid fucking yesterday. So get out there and do that and get on it. And he doesn't mince words is the other reason I really got hooked. It's hilarious because I even prefaced my reading of a selection of his text with like, it's, as with all theory, we accept it as a product of its time and take from it what still holds up today, and understand that choices of rhetoric may not necessarily be something we always agree with, because he calls for people to be assassinated in it. And I'm like, oh, you can't say that on YouTube, but people who are still living today. But I think that he has the right idea, and that's why, at the very least, get off of this long tangent. That's why I
when you
identify as black anarchist, not
yeah. Do you feel like there is a distinction really in calling yourself black anarchist specifically?
yes,
Yeah.
because regardless of what your European model of communism, be it Authcoms and a more unified state in service of the people, or regardless of a complete dissolution of the state, uh, and a complete removal of those unjust hierarchies, which is kind of where I stand. I'm pretty much in pro of abolishing most of our state structures here in the U.S., more than what a lot of other so-called anarchists say, because they say, oh yeah, abolish the police. I'm like, yes, abolish the police. And then I'm like, abolish the Senate. And they're like, yes, abolish the Senate. I'm like, abolish the Pentagon. And they're like, huh? And I'm like, abolish the Supreme Court. And they're like, hold on, abolish the president. And they're like, and I'm like, I could go on. Like, what we need an executive branch for? Why does there need to be an executive? And so
Right.
I think, however, what the distinction of black anarchist is, regardless of if everything that the majority of MLs or Authcoms that I talk to online want happens tomorrow, like it all happens tomorrow, like union membership across all of our industries is in the 90%, right? And we are able to institute things like universal health care and public access to post-secondary education. And if we're able to restore land autonomy to the indigenous peoples inhabiting this continent, and if we're able to get women's reproductive rights, and if we're able to overhaul our education system, and if we're able to do all of that stuff that we want, in the back of my mind, I'm like, yes, but there still is the matter of an unpaid debt to Black America that we need to settle. And
Mm, mm,
and that's not going to go away. So
yeah.
that's why I make the distinction, because I think a lot of other people, especially a lot of your European leftists, get so caught up in that, where they're saying, no, we're off into our luxury fully automated gay space communism. We're
Oh
off to the
yeah.
races. And
I've never enjoyed that.
and I'm like, hold on a second, y'all. There's some unfinished business that we need to address.
Gonna have the bread first.
Yeah. Need the bread first. And moreover, there's a matter of undoing the several steps down the ladder that Black America has been kicked. And
Yeah.
just because someone gets kneecapped at the start of the race and you stop and heal their wound, have they caught up? No, they've been kneecapped the whole race. That's the essence of restorative justice. So I guess it's anarchism with restorative justice characteristics.
The Timbo Irvin said, I think, like in the book, the fact says it quite bluntly, the fact that America was literally founded on the belief of freedom for settlers, but not for black people, but to have black people still enslaved. That's literally
Oh yeah.
the foundation stone of America. And even though you've had obviously reforms over the past 200 years or so, the fact of the matter is, I think some people might maybe be fooling themselves in thinking that, like, once we have the revolution, whatever, that'll be fine. But it's like, no, it's going to be so much more damning, I guess, than we might think it is. It's going to be like just an entire rebuilding and reimagining of the entire society. And I think unless it really sort of makes your bones kind of tremble, then I don't think I think there's still probably an injustice there, isn't there?
And I yes, there is. And one of the things that, it's honestly one of two future video topics that I have put to paper, at least started to, is the revolution needs to occur in our minds first. There's some things I unfortunately don't believe we can change with the stroke of a pen in an Oval Office or with a hole punched in a ballot box. Some of these things are a philosophical shift that we need to see cognitively across the society. And some of them are, broad topics like sustainability, economic sustainability. I'm sorry, I'm of the belief that a sustainable future does not include 2-day shipping. we have to recognize that a
Yes. Yes.
a car less or car exempt future, I'm talking about automobiles, personal automobiles, and a fully public transited future may not necessarily have you clicking a button on Amazon and a package magically appears in 48
Mm.
hours. We've been conditioned to see that now as the norm,
Yes.
as the tech bros took their tax incentives and ran with them. And I'm be the first to say I love it, because if I could sit in this office right here and order literally every fucking thing and work from right here, I wouldn't get out of this chair. I would automatically unlock the door and tell my delivery driver to walk up the steps and set it on my desk. Okay, but that is not a sustainable future. So for people who
No.
talk about an environmentally sustainable future, hey, some stuff's got to go.
Yeah.
And if we want, and a
I
lot
mean,
of people say they want decolonization, but some stuff's gonna have to change, and it might not be comfortable to think about.
decolonization on my terms.
Yeah.
And I remember a while ago there were some bloody people talking about like how uh, growth, the idea of degrowth, and not trying to expand or whatever is Malthusian and stuff like that. I'm just like, but you understand that like
Oh, we can call
replacing,
them out. It was Caleb Malpin. I have no
yeah.
problem saying
Oh, was
fucking
it?
names on
Yeah,
stream.
probably. Well, it was probably him. It was probably a few other people as well. But just this whole, yeah, the topic at the time that was like that, and it's like you understand that yes, okay, it might be technically growth by adding a bus, but if you take away 50 cars, then that's technically degrowth, because you're removing that and replacing it with something that is
More
is is,
efficient.
is going in a, yeah, more efficient, yeah. And I just, yeah, yeah, I mean, if you're of the opinion that you want this luxury communism, I mean, I I'm not gonna I'm not gonna denounce that absolutely. If we want some kind of utopian system, then yes, of course we do. But that requires, first of all, everything has to be sort of brought into a way that we can sustain it first. And I think that is, if we can get to there, then we can start having chats about self-actualization and all that. And I think that will probably happen anyway as we're going that way. I think it's only really the sort of capitalist mentality that's conditioned us into this belief that we need to have full full what's the word, convenience every single minute of every single day.
Yeah, no, it's we have to think about the some of the luxuries. Um, oh, give me just a second here, all right? I'm
Okay.
just a second.
Family man.
Okay. Well, we're actually coming up on an hour, and I thank you so much for speaking with me. I do have something that has come up that is pulling my attention away. So,
Oh, that's a
everybody,
shame.
yes, we didn't. I didn't get a chance to get to the part that maybe was more difficult to talk about, but perhaps some other time we'll circle back around. But
Yeah,
listen,
that's a shame.
everybody who tuned in, thank you for tuning in. Badmouse, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for
It's
having me.
been an absolute pleasure. Please, he's in the description is the link to his YouTube. I don't know how much YouTubing he does on the reg, but feel free to give him a sub. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me.